Hello, my name is Grant Fritchie. I'm the Scary DBA. I work for Redgate Software. Today I want to talk to you about backups, but more specifically I want to talk to you about Azure backups. The thing to remember is Microsoft has built a series of tools that ensure the availability of your data, but backups are still a problem that you have to think about and come up with decisions on. Redgate takes backups pretty seriously, and that's why we have the Redgate cloud services. These include SQL Azure backup, storage backup, NoSQL backup, and a mechanism for scheduling these backups. SQL Azure Backup uses the backpack to create a copy of your database to either Azure Blob Storage or Amazon S3. Storage backup is a means of creating copies of your Azure Blob Storage. You can copy between containers as a means of storing the information on more than one data center, or again use Amazon S3, or even take Amazon S3 and move it over to Azure. NoSQL backup is a means of exporting your Azure tables to JSON, JavaScript object notation. This gives you a human-readable copy of your large-scale data unstructured storage. Finally, you can set all this up to be automatically fired off whenever you'd like, any way you need to define it through our scheduling tools. Let's take a look. This is Cloud Services at Redgate Software, and you can see the various tools that we've got set up. You can see everything that you need to do, and you can click on this to get started for free. All you have to do is create an account, set it up, and you're good to go. I already have an account configured, so I'm just going to move right over to that. And you can see the various different jobs that I can now create. Now I've got a set of tools here that I can work with. I've got my basic tool set of creating jobs, I've got schedules and history, and I've got some other settings and some support. But basically we're going to start off with backup to Azure. I'm going to go ahead and do the backup directly to Azure Blob Storage. And I do have to sign in. I am the Scary DBA. Luckily it remembers me. And so now what I've got to do is set up my Azure storage. So I have to have my Azure firewall, the server that I'm installing to, my username, which is an administration login to that database, a password, and the database. So let's go ahead and get that set up. First off, my server, my username, and my password. I would make sure that you test this and validate that you are getting good databases in line. So we're going to start off with Redgate Cloud Services database. Now you have the option when doing a DAC pack backup of creating a copy of your database in order to maintain transactional consistency, because the straight DAC pack will not maintain that consistency. So we've got that option right here, and you can set that up. Next, you've got to set up a storage account, and you can see the various information that you've got to put in. I have to set up my storage account, and I have to provide it with my storage account name. I happen to know what mine is, so I'm just going to type it in. You can see that you pull that from the subdomain of your account URI, and you can configure those. You may have different ones at different points in time. You can set up multiple storage accounts within your own Azure storage system. You will have to set up storage access keys on each of those, and just like the login, I definitely recommend that you test that connection when you're setting these things up to ensure that you've got it right. You could simply type, but validating that you've got it configured correctly is the right way to go. Now, right now I only have two containers. I have a container for my virtual hard drives, and I have a container that I'm using for my backups, my Scary backup. And we're going to give it a file name, RG Cloud Service Backup. I can't configure it, so I remove backups older than a certain number of days. We'll go with 2. And once you've got everything configured, you click on Continue. It's going to show you a summary of what you've created. I'm going from this server to this storage area, from this database to this container. I'm going to create a copy before I do the backup. I'm going to remove backups older than 2 days. Now, scheduling. I can schedule daily, I can schedule monthly. I can determine the days of the week. I can set it up so that it's on a particular time zone. Since Azure works off UTC, I would strongly suggest you follow along with that and configure your systems on the same fashion. And I can just simply run it right now. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and schedule it. I can schedule it monthly for a particular time on a particular day of the month, or I can do daily at whatever times I want. We're going to go ahead and schedule it as is, and it will bring me to my schedules and history page, which already, as you can see, has lots and lots of stuff going on. Now this is setting up right now my backup schedule, and it's just going to take it a couple of minutes to get things configured and set up, so you can just wait on that. In the meantime, I've already run a backup on that system, so I want to show you how we can do a restore. But before we do that, I want to go over here to the management portal and show you the database that I've created. Now it's a very simple database. I've created one table on the database. I've inserted some records into that database once upon a time, and we've created a backup of that. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete data from that database, and then we're going to do a select from the new table there. Helps if you select it, hit run, and we get results back, and you see once upon A. So we've deleted the row. Let's go back here to our schedules and backup, and you can see right here, by clicking on this, I can set up new jobs. I can look at the details of this job. I can clone it. I can run a restore, or I can even run now. So I can take a scheduled backup and run it immediately. In this case, what I want to do is a restore, but I'm not going to do it from here. I want to go back to the tools and show you how we do it from this side. So I'm going to restore SQL Azure from Azure, and you'll see that I've got my same type of setup that I've got to set up. I've got to set up my account name, my storage access key, and all that stuff. So let's get started there. We'll do a test. We've got the scary backup. And then file names, we're going to go out and search, and we've got that backup already set up, right? It's completely ready to go. And if there is a series, we can use the latest in the series, so you don't have to try to select a file. Next, we're going to connect to a particular Azure system. So I have my Azure database portal, and I'm going to go ahead and type in my username and password. And again, test to validate that I got it right. Now, it's letting us pick database name because we can restore to the existing database, or we can create a new database. I'm going to create a new database for this one. RG Cloud Services Test. Just for now, it will let me pick the database size up to 150 gigs. I know this is a small 1 gig web database, and I can execute a store procedure, or I can replace an existing database, which will restore the database as it says here. If it's successful, it will then drop the old database, and then the temporary database is renamed. It's a great way to go about the process to ensure that you don't screw anything up or lose anything that's already on your system. I'm going to now continue. Again, I can schedule the restore, so I can set this up so it restores these databases on a regular basis on its own, or in this case, I'm going to run now. It then switches over, and you can see that it's setting up and running that restore. It's going to take it a couple of minutes to get it going. It's going to take some time for it to process. This is a couple of minutes later, and I've got my restore is complete. So let's switch back over here. We can see it on the Azure portal. So let's go in and manage that one. Log in to the database. Type in my username and password. And then we're going to run a query. And we're going to select star from dbo.my new table and run. and we get back 4 rows once upon a time. So you can see that the restore did actually work. Next, I want to work on synchronizing storage. Now we can synchronize storage from Azure to Azure, Azure to Amazon, or Amazon to Azure. That means you can more or less move your blob storage between 2 containers, say between 2 data centers, or from Azure to Amazon, Amazon to Azure, as mechanisms for backing up any kind of your large object storage. Now I'm going to do Azure to Azure for this demonstration only because I don't maintain Amazon accounts anymore because they're too expensive. My account name is Cloud Dojo, and I do have my access key, and we're going to go directly from my scary backup, and I'm going to then again I'm going to the same account name, but the container this time I'm going to Cloud Services Backup, and that will compare the two. It will use file checksums, otherwise it just does a file name match. And I can snapshot the files before overwriting, so it creates a copy of them, and I can create multiple copies of the snapshots. I'm not going to do either of those for the moment, and we'll click continue. As before, I can schedule this for later, or I can just run it immediately. The scheduling is more or less set up the same way, so I'm not going to talk about that for the moment. I'm just going to click run now. You'll see it goes back over to the cloud services area where we've already got things running, and it's showing me that I'm doing my copy, the scary backup from Cloud Dojo to the Redgate Cloud Services is getting copied over, and the backups are occurring. Let's take a look at the next tool. We can snapshot our storage, which basically snapshots all modified files. It's a quick way to create a copy of what's going on. We'll go through that one right now. Oops. It's not Cloud Dojo Cloud, it's Cloud Dojo. Again, test that connection, make sure that you got it right. We're just going to do a snapshot here on the scary backup. And on success, we're going to remove any snapshots that are older than 2 days. We'll click continue. Once more, we're allowed to set up that scheduling any way we want. And I'm going to click on run now. That's going to immediately move in, and it's going to start running the processes again. Same thing that we talked about before. It's finishing that stuff up. You can see where I've finished the Cloud Dojo copy has finished. I've got a scheduled backup ready to run, and the other stuff that I've done, the restores and other backups, have all completed as well. Let's go back to the tools one more time. Finally, let me show you the backup to Azure table. Now, Azure tables are NoSQL, large-scale unstructured storage, and they can be created inside of Azure and stored as part of the blob storage. And so you can export them to JSON or JavaScript object notation files. And it's pretty straightforward. Basically, you just have to provide an account name, the key, of course, and you test it. Now, I don't have any set up right now, so I'm not going to be able to run this backup, but it's pretty straightforward. You're going to give it, again, your storage account name, the storage access key. You'll define a container, and you'll give it a file name, and it's going to back up those files out to that JSON format. It's really straightforward, no real tricks. Now, as far as the schedules and history go, it's worth taking a look at, because if you've got scheduled events, you can go in and edit them and modify these things so that they run different ways later. So if you need to change the connection information, you can, or you can go in here and actually change the schedules so you can run them at different times if you want to. However you want to work it, you can set that up. So we can schedule that, and it'll now change the schedule for that particular backup process. So now that will run at different ways. You can look at previous events that have occurred and see what happened. So let's take a look at the one where we did the backup here. And you can see the progress that occurred, how it did, what things it did, the way it made the connections, when it was starting the restore, waiting for it to complete, completed it, all set, all done. and everything's good to go. You can modify some of the settings, changing the backup settings, changing passwords, email notification, and manage your subscription. And you can definitely contact support. We've got some of the basic facts set up, and then you can search our forums and get in there. And these are the tools from Redgate Cloud Services. Thank you for watching. My name is Grant Fritchie. I am the Scary DBA. I work for Redgate Software.